Pittsburgh Steeler fans, it is time once again for another edition of the Curtain Call podcast. My name is Michael Beck, your deputy editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, and my guest, as always, one Mr. Geoffrey Benedict. Geoffrey, how you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing great, Michael. Forgot to take my glasses off.
It's all good. Hey, I wish I was doing great. If you didn't know, Bruce Arians just retired as the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Todd Bowles retired. And when you go big fish hunting, when you're trying to get guests for your weekly show that airs at a certain time, sometimes when there's breaking news on a Wednesday at let's see here, 8:45 Eastern time, which never happens, but sometimes it does, and your guests can't make it on the show. We got a phone call just before hitting that darn live button. Geoffrey Benedict can attest that someone had to go write a story. So. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, that we don't have the expert here. It's live podcasting. What are you going to do, I suppose? But thankfully, tonight's topic was Penn State, and being able to kind of check out some of their games throughout the year. There are definitely a number of names that still jump off the paper, and some guys that we certainly know. And right now, of course, if you've seen any of my work on BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, I'm a firm believer right now that the Pittsburgh Steelers will probably spend a high draft pick, most likely their first-round pick, on a quarterback. They're just putting in too much time, money, energy at scouting this spot. It just, when there's smoke, there's fire, people, and they are going to all the top quarterbacks prospects, and by all, like, and by who, I should say, it's Tomlin, it's Colbert, it's Brandon Hunt, it's Omar Khan, it's Matt Canada, it's Mike Sullivan, like. Anyone who's anyone in this offense or organization are going to these quarterback workouts, and it's typically more than 3, I think upwards of 8, depending on which pro day we're talking about. So in that sense, I think quarterback is super likely. And Geoffrey, I'll get your opinion on that as well. But I feel like if it's not the quarterback spot, to me, receiver, until they figure something out, they still just have 2 guys. And one guy that honestly makes a lot of sense is Jahan Dodson, out of Penn State. Does receiver make sense in the first round? And could it be Dodson that his name comes off the board at 20?
I could see it. I don't. I mean, I loved the era where we were picking up great receivers in the second and third round. I'd like to see, and even the fourth, like with Martavis Bryant, we were getting production out of everywhere. But maybe this is the year you have to sit and say, hey, maybe we need to bring in a top tier, guy with a pedigree. So I could see it. I like his flexibility. He can play all over the place, which fits into a lineup where we can sit here and say, who's playing what position. We don't know. Everyone has position flexibility. Everyone can move around, and he'd fit that well. So it could definitely be a Dodson. He has the speed. If you're gonna, I would love a formation, if you think about it, with like him and Claypool on the same side, where you've got the shorter guy who's just wicked fast, has that sprinter speed, and you've got Claypool who you have to deal with as a deep threat as well, and can run underneath and be a possession guy as well. So for me, he makes a lot of sense.
No, hey, absolutely. I definitely think that's an option that this team has going for them here. Like receiver, it's just one of those crazy spots right now. Like, could Dodson be the guy? Absolutely. But should the Steelers be making a move just to kind of bounce back and forth a little bit here? Does it make sense for the Steelers to make a move at receiver before the draft even happens? The market seems like it's completely cooled off, but there still isn't many names there. Do you think it's a wise move to try to bring in a vet before the draft, or should the Steelers kind of bring in just basically Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson as their receivers?
Well, I think you can roll with that. I'm not sleeping on Anthony Miller either. He was a good receiver for Trubisky before. They might be able to find a good role for him. I mean, and we're talking number 3, number 4 receiver here. It's not like, they need to come in and be the guy. So I think you can survive. I of course, am a big fan of getting a veteran in that room, have been for several years. I think it's a mistake that they haven't. But I'm not them. I don't get to make those choices. But yeah, I would bring in a veteran. But at the point they're at now, it might be worth it just to sit it out, wait, because you're going to be able to find a veteran afterwards. I think the reason we're seeing this market on wide receivers where it is right now in this immediate moment is because of the sheer volume of wide receivers in this draft class. And if you were going to get one of those, why would you sign a veteran now only to be like, hey, this guy can, we got another guy that can play. I think you're going to see some guys wait until after the draft. And you might even see a player opt to wait till after the draft when a team that missed out on those wide receivers is suddenly like, okay, well, now we really need a receiver. A little desperation breeds a little bit more money.
Kind of moving out to another position that is interesting at Penn State here, at linebacker, of course. Linebacker Penn State. We know all about this. Brandon Smith is an interesting name to me because he represents something the Steelers don't have and typically, historically, have. He is, let's see here, 6'3", 240 pounds, and still quite an athletic linebacker, but he's a downhill, heavy hitter, wrap you up, take your butt to the ground type of player. According to Draft Bible, he's the 54th overall prospect, number 4 overall linebacker, back-to-back all Big Ten, and was third team in 2021. So 3 times on that list. One of the things that pops off with him is a fierce hitter. Not quite an open field guy, but he kind of that Vince Williams type role. Now, I know the Steelers linebacking position is pretty dang filled up, but what do you kind of anticipate the Steelers doing moving forward there? Should they be looking at someone like a Brandon Smith, or is this a complete revamp of this position?
Well, Brandon Smith makes a lot of sense. Like if we go back to last year at this time, you and I, one of our prized things was you want a buck linebacker who's faster than Vince Williams. You want a more athletic version of Vince Williams. And I mean, Brandon Smith's kind of that guy. He is that guy. And you could come in, you could bring him in with the front room, with the linebackers in front of you have now. You could play him in specific roles that play to his strength, and then let him grow as a player in coverage and some of the things he's not quite as good at. I think the guy would be a good fit then. Right now, man, I don't know what we're doing with our linebacker room. But I like him, and he is what we've wanted in the past, and he is what would fit the Steelers. I just don't know if the Steelers think Miles Jack is that answer to that question, and that question's already been filled. The guy we just got from the Jets, Jannard Avery, Eagles, not Jets. Wow. I don't know if they think he fits that category, but if they don't think they have that filled, I mean, obviously we have Buddy Johnson still on the roster. There's other guys there. If they don't think they filled that yet, yeah, you could see that second, third round even. You could see a pick like that. Go crazy, have 3 linebackers again like they did in 2019. It worked well.
Yeah, it'll be one of those things to kind of watch out for. And I guess one of the next names to kind of move on, and a position group that is growing more interesting by the day, is that safety spot. The Steelers still don't have a strong safety in play. We can get to some other things on that in a minute, but keeping things with Penn State, Jaquan Brisker, he's someone that's seen as kind of like a second-round prospect, more of a strong safety, someone that's also played nickel. Steelers kind of still looking at both spots. Does that make any sense? If I see correctly here, Big Ten top safety, made 5.5 tackles for loss. He didn't play in the bowl game, but he was a pretty big deal for Penn State, their defensive MVP. So a solid prospect and someone that kind of fits that strong safety mold. Do the Steelers necessarily need someone that is a true strong safety, or has football kind of moved away from that?
Well, this is interesting to me because if you look more in depth into it, say one of the reasons they say he's a strong safety is because he can play free safety, but he's not a cover 1 free safety. He can cover people in the nickel. He's got that versatility. And when you see that profile, people always say, oh, that's a strong safety. There's another player who came out with that same kind of issue of, okay, where do we play him? He can play in the slot. He can do all this stuff. He can be a safety. He can play but he's not really a Jesse Bates cover 1 safety. He's not that guy. And I'm talking about Mika Fitzpatrick. Now, this guy isn't the playmaker. Mika Fitzpatrick is, but he's got a similar profile of a player who just doesn't fit your traditional cover one free safety. But is he a nickel corner? We don't know. Is he a strong safety? That's probably where he's going to fit. Steelers already use those guys, right? The Steelers have the ability to use those guys. If the Steelers are looking for another deep safety, if they're looking for a player to play that kind of a role, then yeah, he fits. If you're looking for a guy who can come down in the box and be a robber, but also can drop back and be the free safety and let Mika Fitzpatrick be the robber, this is a guy who can do that. And the cool thing about it is where Mika Fitzpatrick kind of with Terrell Edmunds was forced into certain roles, this is a situation where you could have them both line up like they're in cover two, and you could see either one of them go forward and either one drop back into a cover three or into a single high safety. You could see either of those happen, and it just changes your focus. Like, where does the defense really have to avoid? And if you're attacking a guy like Brisker, I mean, he can make plays. He's not Minka, but you could still get burned. You think he's a guy you can just go after. So I think there is a way to use him. It just depends on how the Steelers want to use Minka, how much they want to move him around, and how much the Steelers want to use that safety in the box. Because if you're just going straight up box safety, I don't think this is the guy. If you want him to be a cover one safety, I don't think he's the guy. He's kind of a mix in between, kind of like Minka.
Is it becoming more likely that a rookie could be starting at that safety spot?
I think so.
Really?
I do think so, because I think at this point, like, if the Steelers were kind of in on Tyrann Mathieu, at this point, I think is where they would. I think we're already getting to the point where they would kind of check out and be like, we're going to get Terrell and make sure we have somebody if they were relying on that. I think this is a Steelers team that is willing to go into the draft with what they have currently signed, which makes you wonder, like, do they have a lot of faith in Trey Norwood being that number 2 safety? And if that's the case, then a guy like that makes sense to upgrade. A safety like that makes sense to come in and be like, well, now you have 3 guys, that you can do this stuff with, which is always better, especially when you can play him in dime and nickel. That's kind of where I'm on that, and it'll be interesting to see where they go with it. But yeah, I do think that a rookie has a bigger shot right now than they did a week ago. Last time we talked about Tyrann Mathieu, and that the circumstances are kind of getting dragged out. And I think the farther we go, the more likely it is we could see a safety. There's some good safeties in this draft.
I do want to talk about safeties more, but we did get a super chat here from George Teston, puts $5 in the tip jar. He says, what are the chances they, being the Steelers, pick Jordan Stout, punter, place kicker in this draft, strong leg, and backup Boswell? Now, I can answer this one, and I'll let you take a swing at things too, but I firmly believe the Steelers won't be in this market at all. I don't think they're going to be looking to draft any special teamers this year. They did it with Presley Harvin. Mike Tomlin, the way he spoke at the NFL Coaches Summit thing down there in Palm Springs, kind of mentioned that they have, 25 of 26 starters, I think is the way he put it. That would include all your special teamers. I can't see them burning another draft pick on special teams, especially a kicker, punter, and definitely not someone that's going to back up Chris Boswell. So I just don't see it. Would you agree with that, Geoffrey?
Yeah, I don't see it, which, he's one of those players that you look at and you say, oh man, like he'd be fun just because of his leg. But no, I don't see it happening.
Okay. Yeah, no, fair enough. Now, flipping things back over to the safety side of things, it was still interesting that Tyrann Mathieu on a podcast today did say that Mike Tomlin did reach out to him. So, at least in that sense, it's like, okay, the Steelers are still cognizant of this happening. And just based on the timeline of what Tyrann Mathieu was looking for, that was kind of reported that he wants to wait till potentially after the draft and see what teams are still kind of in the market. The Steelers seem to be the team that are kind of just floating around there. To me, it almost feels like it's more likely that it ends up being him. Like right now, Tyrann Mathieu's down there at spring camp for LSU. He's busy. He's not doing like his own football thing. He's just hanging out at his alma mater, coaching, running around, working out, just doing that. So he's busy. He's not focused on contracts right now. So especially as far as the Steelers go and their philosophies of the draft, I do have a hard time seeing them bring no one in at that spot for the draft. But if they exited the draft without taking a strong safety or just a safety in general, all of a sudden the bells and whistles are going off in my head. That's the guy. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. If they don't sign anyone now, they don't sign anyone in the draft. Tomlin has clearly stated they don't have that starter.
Yeah.
Right? They don't have that guy. So yeah, they've got to have something lined up, which is interesting to me that you've got the two guys that really fit what they've done under Terrell Austin in Tyrann Mathieu and Terrell Edmunds, because I think those two fit it the best in that role. They're both sitting there. They're both waiting. And the Steelers are sitting here waiting. And I'm like, all right, let's see what happens.
Yeah, it's almost like the Steelers are like waiting to see what happens with either player, like one player first.
Yeah.
But what's interesting to me is like Edmunds is steadily improved. He's still there without a contract. What happens if he does just sign with another team, say tomorrow or in the next 30 minutes? Terrell Edmunds signs with blah, 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 not the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now do the Steelers have to scramble to get a Matthews deal done? Are they forced into using a high draft pick at strong safety? Like, what happens if you heard the Terrell Edmunds signed with not the Pittsburgh Steelers? What does this team have to do now to solidify that position?
Oh man, you've got to move. Like that is such a key position. I don't think people understand how important strong safety is. How many things Terrell Edmunds was tasked with doing, right? Now, obviously, we'd love a playmaker in that position, someone who could do a whole bunch of things. And at the same time, take the ball away, make some splash plays, show up a bit more on film, looking better. But Terrell Edmunds does it all at a good enough level, and he does a lot of different roles. So that's an important part. If they intend to keep that position doing what that's been the last couple of seasons, you've got to address that because that is a key position. And one of the things that's crazy to me is we've seen how valuable safeties are in the current NFL, where cornerbacks have a harder time locking down receivers, and safety help is a bigger deal than that's really ever been, in my opinion, because no one can be on an island anymore. No cornerback can survive on an island with the top receiver the way the rules are. So to me, those safeties are more important than ever. And the strong safety role has become so versatile to the fact that you're a linebacker, you're a cornerback, you're deep zone, you're short zone, you're a blitzer, you're a run stuffer, all these different roles. And it's one of the least valued positions on any team. Like everyone's just like, yeah, well, I mean, anyone can do that. But we constantly see that people, not everyone can. Even like a guy like Jamal Adams, he needs the right scheme. You get the guy, and maybe that's it. I don't know. Maybe it's just so many different schemes use that position differently that maybe there's not a lot of buyers for a Terrell Edmunds. But I can't imagine somebody's not going to pick him up, or there's not at least interest for him. And if there's not, hey, then he can be the Steelers' plan B.
And there really isn't nothing wrong with that in my eyes. So, yeah, that's one to watch out for. It's been one to watch out for weeks, but hopefully this ends with a happy little news cycle with a big-time upgrade. But before that, the Steelers last year didn't take anyone from Pitt or Penn State. Could that change this year? How likely is it that the Steelers take someone from the Nittany Lions, my goodness, or the Panthers in this year's draft?
I think there's actually a pretty good chance. I would say like 30% I would be willing to go, because some of the things just line up, especially depth pieces. Like Penn State has some good depth pieces that really fit what Brian Flores does, what other people do. And they've got they've got players at the right positions. Like you could see Dodson fall. Like he's a player that could. There's a lot of speed in this draft, a lot of speed with a little bit more height than he has. You could see him fall. You could see the edge rushers fall. You could see any of these players kind of drop a bit, and the Steelers be like, you know what, that fits. Let's go grab that position. So I think there's a good chance for a Penn State player. I think there's a good chance for a Pitt player too. I think we'll see Like I said, I think 30% is a good number. Good odds that one of those guys end up on the team.
Yeah, hey, that would be. It's always an interesting story, especially if you can keep someone at home. So we'll see if that plays out. But I guess with it, one of the things that we've been talking about this quarterback position, kind of open the show a little bit with it. The Steelers, of course, spending tons of time and energy and money going to the pro days of these top quarterbacks. Do you think this first round pick is going to be a quarterback? It's going to be Kenny Pickett or Malik Willis. It doesn't really matter on who it is, but with the amount of time and money and effort, like I've said a few times now, does it just feel like a lock that the Steelers are going quarterback in the first round of this draft? Like, because me right now, I almost just want to say, like, okay, day one of the draft is already going to be over and the Steelers will have a quarterback. We just got to know who the name is. Like, it seems like they're hell-bent on going quarterback in round one.
I look at it a little different. I see all that attention. And the way, I think it was Dan Rooney and said it one time about they wanted, and I think Kevin Colbert said it once, something about wanting to, like, if they're in a position to make this signing, right? They're in a position to bring in the next quarterback and they want to do it right. Quarterback is such an important position. If you do, I mean, we've seen it. You look at Cleveland. You take a quarterback in the first round and they stink, you're in bad shape. Like, that's almost worse than, like, Bud Dupree. Was he great? No. What was the defense good with him? Yeah. Terrell Edmonds. Was he great? No. But he's still, you can win with him, right? You can win with these guys. If your first round quarterback isn't very good, you're not winning with him, right? Or even if he's like kind of good, you're in a position where Cleveland is right now with Baker, where they had to go and get Deshaun Watson because, like, all this just chaos where you're sitting there saying we'd like to upgrade from this quarterback, but he has enough swag, he has enough, clout that you can't just go move on from him and then, hey, okay, can you stick around if we didn't get Deshaun Watson? That didn't work. And look where they are now. Like, look at the situation they're in. If you take that early quarterback, you've got to know who you're taking. You've got to really dig into their character. I think this is personally, I think Mike Tomlin doesn't want a repeat of his early days on this team when Ben Roethlisberger wasn't a leader, where he was a good quarterback, really good quarterback, but he wasn't a team leader. The 2012 season where he's fighting with his offensive coordinator. Like, you've got veterans leaving the team saying, this guy's leader, he's not that guy. Well, he turned it around, but I don't think Mike Tomlin wants to be a coach where he's got a quarterback that isn't that guy. And you've got to wait 7-8 years for him to, grow up and become the leader that the team really needs him to be. So I think a lot of the effort going into this is more respect for what the quarterback position means and how important it is if you make that choice to know the choice you're making and to get it right. So are the Steelers going to take a quarterback in round one? There's definitely scenarios with the amount of attention they're paying to it. There are definitely scenarios where they take that quarterback. I don't think this is all so much they're desperate to take a quarterback and no matter what, they've got to come out of here with a quarterback. I think this is, they are developing their list of who they would take, when they would take them, what resources would you give up for this guy? And they might come out. You could see them take a guy out to dinner, meet with him, talk to his family, do all this stuff and come out and say, you know what? That's not a first round guy. That's not a guy we take at 20. If he's there in second round or third round, maybe, or maybe they come out of it saying, you know what? That's not the guy we want to take. We don't want that guy to be our quarterback. They're going to come out with that. That's what this process is about. And they're going to find a couple of guys that they probably would take, know when they would take them. And if those opportunities present themselves, Steelers have a new quarterback.
No, that's a good way to put it. To me, it's still hard to look past the fact that they're so active in this pro day circuit. They are doing everything. Like, they're sending the farm to these camps. Like, what else is at Ole Miss? Like, what else is there really at Pitt? Like, it's Kenny Pickett. What about North Carolina? Like, Mike Tomlin was disappointed he couldn't make it because he was stuck at the coaches thing. But Kevin Colbert and all the other coaches are still there, and apparently giving a big hug. And like seriously, they are donating so much of their time to schools that just have a quarterback coming out. Like I still think that like it's becoming increasingly more likely that it's going to end up being a quarterback in the first round, whether we like it or not.
Oh yeah, I would give it. I'd give it higher odds than the Penn or Pitt State player. I'd say quarterback is probably around 50-50 now for me. In my opinion, I think it's about 50-50 the Steelers go quarterback in the first round.
To me, I honestly, like, my gut feeling is like 80-20 in favor of it happening. Like, and the 20% is if one of the two guys aren't there at 20. Like, it comes down to other teams.
Let me bring something interesting at the quarterback position to you. All right, let me bring this up and let me get your thoughts on it. John Harbaugh just re-signed with the Ravens.
Yep.
And notoriously, they are trying to get Lamar Jackson to sign a contract. And from some of the things that have been said, where they're like, we just need to get him to like sign it. We're trying to extend the guy, give him tons of money. We just need him to sign it. Lamar Jackson decides he's not going to sign an extension with the Ravens, and he's going to play out and go to free agency. We know Mike Tomlin was a big fan of his. Right? What do you think that would be like if Lamar Jackson went and decided to go into free agency before the 2023 season, and the Steelers, let's say the Steelers don't draft a quarterback this year, and it's Mitchell Trubisky and Mason Rudolph. Do you think Lamar Jackson as a Steeler, would you want that? Would you want the contract you'd have to pay him? Would he be worth it?
The contract is what I get hung up on. Like, if he's a $40 million a year player, like, I don't know. I don't know if he's the guy, considering his playing style is so likely to bring injury and drop off quicker than other players because he has to be mobile. If you take that facet away from him, is he still one of the best players in the game? Like, if you sign him for like a 7-year extension, like 7 years from now, is he still going to be as athletic? Like, is he still going to be as healthy? Like to me, that's the big issue there and makes things hard. And like, if you develop that guy, sure. Like, I get it. Like, he's an athlete. He's a former league MVP, but I just don't. I don't know if that's the move. Like, just spending money on a mobile quarterback. I understand how good he is. Like I know.
Like, he is the mobile quarterback. That's like Michael Vick level. Almost.
Yeah. It makes it hard. Like, when Michael Vick's legs started to give out under him near the end, like, especially when he ended up in Pittsburgh, like, you just knew the writing was on the wall. Like, he just didn't have it anymore. So what scares me is having Lamar Jackson under contract. Sure, you could have some explosive years, but he gets a hamstring injury or knee or something. Knock on wood. But then all of a sudden, his greatest talent gets taken away. And then teams can kind of tee off on a little bit more. He still doesn't have the nicest throwing motion or the best decision-making or the most accurate arm. But his athleticism opens up more gaps down the field because of what he's able to do on his legs. So in that sense, I'm like, yeah, if you could get that Lamar Jackson, that's great. But after a fifth-year option, like, you want to sign him to a 7-year deal? Like, there's some quarterbacks that are built to play 20, 25 seasons, a la Tom Brady. Like, you stand in the quarterback in the pocket, rather. You're not very athletic. You just drive the ball down the field and you spend a bunch of money on staying as healthy as possible with your muscles and your upper body. I don't know if Lamar Jackson plays the position that way. And that's something that scares me.
Well, let me quick follow up on that. What's your personal better situation that you will take more joy in? Lamar Jackson getting a massive contract extension from the Ravens that locks them up long-term and locks them a huge bunch of their cap up. Let's say a $40 million deal, or Lamar Jackson leaving the Ravens. Which is better for Michael Beck's Steeler fandom?
Oh, that is tough. Like, in one sense, as the football fan, I know that genuinely, like, the teams that immediately after they sign their quarterbacks to a big ticket, they fall off. They usually have a few years of struggle because they just can't afford the rest of the roster. So could that happen to the Ravens? I almost expect it. Yeah, like, I think Cleveland's going to start hurting with this giant deal they have to Deshaun Watson. Kansas City's in decline after Patrick Mahomes. Deals starting to come into place here. Like, they're not as good as they were. So in that sense, like, if he re-signs with Baltimore, at least you know they're going to be worse in the next couple seasons. That's just the way it is. Like, you can't pay someone $50 million, like a huge chunk of your cap, like a quarter of your cap space, and expect your team to be just as good as when they're playing on a deal for like 12, you know? So like, it would still be better off if he wasn't on the team, but if he's getting paid a boatload of money, they're not a Super Bowl scary team to me. It could be a good team, but not one that like scares me in the playoffs.
Yeah, see, I love it because, I mean, what's Lamar ever done to Pittsburgh? Like, right?
Also true.
Yeah, he's not really stomped us.
As
It's like
great as
Baker.
he's
Like,
been.
Baker never did anything against Pittsburgh. Lamar never did anything against Pittsburgh. Joe Burrow has.
Yeah.
Those were harsh.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get to this super chat. Tom Moyer, I believe. Moyer. He puts $10 in the tip jar. Thanks for that, Tom. What do you think about the completion under pressure stat that came out the other day? Willis is the lowest in years at something like 3%, the FBS average, and is in the teens. Burrow was 80 plus as for an example. So I didn't actually see this chart. Completion percentage under pressure is pretty interesting. I like Joe Burrow was special at LSU. Like, that's one of the things I guess with Malik Willis is he still played at Liberty. It's a smaller conference, so he definitely didn't have the amount of talent around him. But Geoffrey, what do you think about completion under pressure?
I've got some stuff for this. One, how do you rate under pressure? That matters because let's say if you're saying like Bud Dupree, right? Used to get close to a quarterback, but you knew he wasn't going to get the guy. He's still blocked, and he can't get off the freaking block. Joe Burrow had really good offensive linemen. He could stand in the pocket, be under pressure, but it's a different kind of under pressure than someone's going to hit you in your face, right? Your pocket is kind of collapsing. You have to move a bit. Like how Ben Roethlisberger used to, in the days of our offensive line being really good, he could extend a play, move over here, move over there, reset the pocket a few times, and he'd still be good. Is he under pressure? Yes. Is he safe still? Yeah, he's still kind of okay, right? Where you see Malik Willis under pressure is heavily skewed to games where they're actually playing people who can play football, right? Where you're not playing a Liberty level opponent. And then you're under pressure, right? That's not I can move around and evade this. That is get rid of the ball, son, because someone twice your size is about to hit you, right? That is, you're facing a team that's better. You not only are these defensive line better, but the cornerbacks are better. He doesn't have wide receivers. They're out there getting open. Joe Burrow, like, he got into trouble. You can always just lob it to Jamar Chase. They won a Super Bowl in the NFL doing that. Like, he could do it in college because he could do it. Like, if you could do it in the NFL, you can do it in college, right? So there is that which kind of skews the numbers, but there's something legit to it as well. I also want to point out one of the guys who had a lower percentage of completion rates in college and notably has had a good NFL career is my guy by the name of Russell Wilson, who had the same struggle as a shorter quarterback. And now he's okay, right? So there's multiple angles on this. But one of the things I will take away is Malik Willis, as much as people love him, he is not a polished quarterback. As much hype as he's gotten, as much as people love the tools, as much as people fall in love with how far he can throw the ball, he is not a polished quarterback. Malik Willis, you are gambling on upside, right? Joe Burrow had a lot more polish by the time he had his breakout season than you see with Malik Willis. So for me, yeah, that does matter. But what does it actually say? I'm not entirely sure how much that is him, how much is that the team situation, how much of that is simply he needs to grow as a quarterback and, have a year or two in the system, and how much could be a sign that this guy's just not going to cut it in the NFL. Or he's going to be a guy who, when he's under pressure, is just run. He's a run guy, like a Lamar Jackson. You get under pressure, you just take off. That's going to be the interesting thing with Malik Willis. to see when he hits the NFL, how much can he grow? How much polish can he gain? How much can he go from the incredible, tantalizing abilities he has? How much can he learn and put that into use in the NFL? That's the question with Malik Willis, and why I think he's going to be one of those guys that goes really high in the draft when he shouldn't. He's probably going to end up on a team that won't give him the time to develop and won't put him in the right situation, and are just going to be like, well, we drafted you, top 5, you go save the team, and that's not going to be a good spot for him.
Yeah, I feel like I could see Washington or Detroit ruin him. So,
oh yeah, Detroit would be a great place to go and get ruined.
Yeah, the only thing with that, at least they still do have Jared Goff, so he could sit. Like, ideally, any of these quarterbacks sit. And honestly, I'd go as far as if any of these rookies started week 1, they would be worse off for it. Like, none of them are ready. They're shoot all their confidence, ruin them for ever having a hope in this league. So, as for the quarterback position, just make sure you have somebody in place. And at least the Steelers have Mitch Trubisky to be able to go out and draft someone and have no pressure on that kid playing in year 1. But moving to another position that also feels like it's becoming increasingly likely that the Steelers will take that not a lot of people are talking about. I believe it's Nick Farabaugh of Pittsburgh now, former BTSCer, he's been on the pro day circuit, going to these events, and he's noted that the Steelers have come out to a lot of schools that have mid to late round running backs. Something we've talked about. It doesn't feel like the Steelers are going to sign one, but with the words that he brought up, it seems like the Steelers could be in the market to draft a running back in the middle or late rounds to hopefully being a running mate with Najee Harris. Of course, the Steelers haven't had a great track record with middle round running backs, mid to late round running backs, I guess I should say. So does that make sense for a stopgap option behind Najee, someone that could spell him for a game if he's injured, or to take a series or two during games when he's inevitably going to get tired, as someone that's going to carry this whole dang offense?
No, it doesn't make sense. Late round running back does not make sense. Your 4th round running backs haven't worked out. So let's spend a 6th. Maybe if we draft a lower one, it'll work better. I don't see it. I don't see that being a good move. The Steelers have not had good success finding, good running backs in the draft. Really, they really haven't. James Conner was a good 3rd round running back. He's a good rotational guy, but that's it. Like Benny Snell hasn't worked out. Anthony McFarland hasn't worked out. These guys don't work out for the Steelers. You either get them high or you don't.
Yeah, no, that's true. But the Steelers still need someone to run behind Najee Harris. So I don't know if they want to burn a top 3 round pick on it, but someone will be added to the fold, I think, at that position, which is also good. Definitely a positive thing. Now,
aside from better with veterans, in all honesty, they do better signing a veteran.
Yeah, you can get a lot of these guys for like bare minimum, like nothing. And they step in and they're fine right away. I love Jerick McKinnon, who I'm pretty sure is still available too. So that could be, if the Steelers signed him, I'd be like, that's a good move, because that guy ripped us alive last year in the regular season and the playoffs. So yeah, no, I'd be all in favor of a move like that. So I guess that's another one we'll have to wait and see. But as it comes to the draft, Steelers have 7 picks, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 being a conditional, 5, 7, 7, if I'm not mistaken. That's what their picks look like currently. I feel like their first 3 rounds are going to be obvious to a degree. If they go any other way, like it might not necessarily be in this order, but I feel like their first 3 draft picks are going to be some combination of a quarterback, a receiver, and a corner. Does that make sense to you?
Man, if that happens, I'm going to be so mad.
Because they didn't take a defensive lineman?
They need to take a defensive lineman. Like, need to. So, yeah, I would not be happy with that. But, yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. I'd probably drop receiver down because I think you can sign one. but they're making signs like they're gonna draft one. I just no, for me, if you took quarter, like that really makes sense, right? So yes, I can agree with it. Personally, I would be upset because in my mind, the perfect draft would be take off quarterback and replace it with defensive tackle, right? If you went defensive tackle, cornerback, and wide receiver in the first 3 rounds, I'd be gold. I'd be happy. We don't need no stinking quarterback anyways.
I know that's what they don't need, but I think it is what's going to happen. So if there's a quarterback at 20th overall, play Genie right now. Who's the name? Who's the quarterback that actually makes it to 20 that the Steelers take?
Oh, man.
Gosh, I'm going to go. Does Malik Willis make it to 20?
No.
Can he pick it?
No, I'm going to go. What is it, Riddler?
Desmond Ridder?
Yeah, Riddler. There you go. The Riddler.
The Riddler.
You don't even know what our offense is. I'm.
See, for me,
you're killing me with this quarterback, man. Hate quarterback.
They're killing. The team's killing us. It's not me doing this. It's the team. They are all in on quarterbacks. It's hard to not look at it. It's like the piece of tinfoil on a nice sunny day that's kind of blowing around in the breeze. It just keeps reflecting in your damn eyes. You know, it's just like it's hard not to look at it. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And right now there's a 5-alarm smoke coming out from over the hill. So I bet you when you crest that hill, once that first overall, 20th overall pick happens, I think we'll see a big raging fire. That is a quarterback position. Yeah, part of me thinks it'll be Sam Howell. But go ahead.
You know, you talked about Nick noticing that they are sending people to places with late round running backs. They're also sending there's one scout who keeps going to places that have like lower tier quarterbacks.
Really?
Same dude over and over. He keeps going to lower tier quarterbacks. So I see that's one of the reasons I don't think I'm completely sold on them getting a quarterback high is because they seem to still be, on the down low, looking at the other guys too. Like if these guys don't fall to us, we'll go over here. If we don't get a guy we like, we'll draft a guy late and then do it again next year. Only, you just draft a quarterback till you get one.
Yeah. They're going to walk away from draft weekend though with a quarterback on this team. It's just happen.
Yeah. At some point in the draft. Yes.
And I really feel like that's becoming more likely that it's the first round, regardless of any of us wanting it. I just, that's just the suspicion.
I refuse to allow it.
Well, you might be disappointed in.
I'm going to write an article and it's going to say Kevin Colbert, don't draft a quarterback. And he's going to listen to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
You got some pull in that facility. I can tell.
I imagine I do.
Okay, well, all that being said, it is time to sign out of this damn show. Geoffrey, Benedict, we got you laughing. I need you to plug your stuff for the people, though.
Yeah, just today is Wednesday, and our Vertex, Dave Schofield and I, our Vertex on Gunner. Oh, I still don't know how to pronounce his last name. Trying to find a place that tells me how to do that. Our stuff on him came out. I've got a film room coming out this week on the Jannard Avery, the linebacker / defensive end we signed. That's going to be a good one. That's going to be a good one because his film is really clear on what he does. There's a lot of questions. If you want answers to who this guy is, what role is he going to play? Is he going to have a role in the team? Is he just seriously, an Anthony Chickillo style depth player? Check out that film room. It's coming out. That'll give you all the answers, all of them that you ever need.
Oh,
all of them.
It's going to be a pretty long podcast, I assume then.
Yeah, the article's it's like a full book. It's the novel version is coming out later this year.
Oh my, good for you.
That's all. That's all I got. I'm. Don't listen to me.
Well, sometimes listen to Geoffrey Benedict, like on our podcast platform for the cutting room floor that drops on Tuesdays. Make sure you check out that from Geoffrey Benedict. Like we always say here, if you're just watching on YouTube or Facebook right now, you're still only getting like a third of the story. Go wherever else you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Spotify, you name it. Wherever you get those podcasts, search Behind the Steel Curtain. Get the entire family of podcasts, including Jeff Hartman's Let's Ride. That's out every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That Cutting Room Floor from Geoffrey Benedict, My Live Mike. Brian Anthony Davis has a new podcast as well that I keep forgetting what the heck it's called, but I know he has a new one. And you guys want to hear that because it's Brian Anthony Davis and his podcasts are all great. So check those out. You're going to get everything from Tony and Shannon and the Boys Down Under and all the extra shows. They're all available on the podcast platforms themselves. So make sure to check those out. I also want to thank everyone for just tuning in here today and remind everyone to click over to BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, breaking down all these players like Geoffrey Benedict is in those film rooms, breaking down the draft that's coming up, players the Steelers should sign. We're still in the thick of the offseason here. But things are not quiet. The Steelers are going to be making probably a couple more signings I anticipate before the draft. Sure, they could be lower tier, but I still anticipate something happening. The draft itself is going to be nuts, as it always is. And probably the week or two following that draft, probably another move popping up. So you want to be locked and loaded to BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. So with all that being said, you've been listening to the Curtain Call podcast from my co-host, Geoffrey Benedict. My name is Michael Beck. We'll catch you guys next week.